Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
And I'm Colleen Sterling. Welcome to Ask the A&Ps from AOPA.
Ask the A&Ps is the show where you give us your toughest maintenance questions, and we do our very best to come up with a solution. So if you have a toughie, please send it to us at podcasts@aopa.org for a chance to get on the show.
Please follow or subscribe to be alerted when the new show comes out so you can hear all of our answers, good, bad, ugly, all those.
Or non-answers.
Or non-answers. Pass.
And if you'd like to get on our email list, if you're not already on our email list for our monthly newsletter and other good stuff, easiest way to do that is to pick up your smartphone and text the word SAVVY, SAVVY, to 33777. And a little bot will ask you for your name and email address and add you to the list. So just text SAVVY, SAVVY, to 33777 to put yourself on our mailing list.
What's everybody been doing since last we met?
Oh, I've actually been spending a lot of time writing an expert witness report defending an IA who's being sued over an air crash, inappropriately, by the way. But
yeah. You do those quite a bit.
I do. I'm working on two cases right now. It's not my day job, but it's something I do in my copious spare time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've done some of that, not much.
You know, aviation it's a horribly litigious business. It's got way too many lawsuits, and in my experience, most of them are bullpucky. I don't know what's the right word.
That's a word.
Just ridiculous. 80% of the time when an airplane crashes, the cause is something that the pilot and command did or failed to do. But 100% of the time that an airplane crashes, there's a lawsuit that is trying to blame the hardware and anybody who has touched the hardware. Yeah. Mechanics and shops and it used to always be that they sued the aircraft manufacturer, Cessna and Piper and stuff. But then 1994, GARA, the General Aviation Revitalization Act, was passed by Congress, which gave the aircraft manufacturers an 18-year, what was called statute of repose, that basically said after 18 years, they were off the hook for product liability. So now the focus of lawsuits has shifted mostly from the aircraft manufacturers, unless the aircraft is a Cirrus or something that's less than 18 years old, then they can go ahead and sue Cirrus, and they do. But most of the GA fleet is older than 18 years. Most of us are flying antiques. And
careful how you use that word now.
And so
I'm in that.
So the lawsuits are now, the defendants are now typically Lycoming or Continental, because typically the engine is less than 18 years since it's been built, rebuilt, or overhauled. And the shops and mechanics that worked on the airplane, vendors of parts. One of the lawsuits I'm working on right now, that they sued the company that did the rebuild on the Magneto. So those are all the kind of defendants that we're seeing now in these suits. And it's very seldom any of their fault, but I mean, but that's who who gets sued because
Do you think they're still going after the deep pockets like they were when they went after the manufacturers? Or is it an emotional thing like, oh, my husband could never have made a mistake. He was an excellent pilot. It must be the equipment.
well, it's just the the grieving widow hires an attorney. And of course they're not always fatal. So sometimes
Well,
there are serious injury accidents where
sure.
it's
Yeah.
the pilot himself that's bringing the lawsuit.
Oh,
But
yeah.
The plaintiff's lawyer's job is simply to get as much money for that grieving widow as he
Yeah.
can.
Okay.
And so how do you do that? Well, you find who has insurance
Okay. Yeah.
and you sue anybody that has insurance.
Yeah, everybody gets included. I mean, because once you start the suit, you can't add people on. So
Okay. So you got to open the net wide. Yeah.
Right.
And if you fail to sue anybody, then the defense the defendants will use what's called the empty chair defense, which is everybody will blame the person who's not in the lawsuit. So, it couldn't have been any of us. It was that guy that you didn't sue.
Yeah.
So they sue everybody that and usually they just sue people who have insurance because it's usually not worth suing anybody who doesn't have insurance. But there's a case I'm working on right now where I'm trying to help defend a poor IA who did an annual on an airplane, and he didn't do anything wrong, but he's involved in the lawsuit because he signed off the last annual on the airplane before it crashed, and he doesn't have any insurance, and he's really in a world of hurt because this is all coming out of his pocket. I almost feel guilty charging him anything for my work because it's really, really unfortunate.
It's interesting that they're actually including him in the lewsuit without any insurance. We have
again, it's probably because of the empty chair notion. It's just if they didn't include him in the lawsuit, then all the other defendants would be pointing at the empty chair that he should have been occupying at the defense table.
I was involved in one like that, and the empty chair was Continental, and Continental wasn't included, and so we took a deep dive. Had a phenomenal investigator on the engine side, and I may be an expert, but there's a big difference between an expert and an investigator. And this guy, his name is Dave. I don't think I can say anything more. But anyway, and this is a couple of years ago. But he was an investigator. And he's like, we have to find out where this stuff came from. And he just kept poking and prodding and taking stuff apart. And when we finally discovered what the deal was, it was a manufacturing, appeared to be a manufacturing deal. Well, so we presented that information. Well, the plaintiff's expert never even went to the engine. It was wow. Everything just suddenly it's like, oh, okay, well, we're all done now, and that was the end.
Yeah, he deflected it. Yeah,
it was totally amazing. So,
well, my friends always are begging me to, hey, would you sign something off, even something minor, and I don't want to be in anybody's logbook for that exact reason.
Yeah.
I just don't want my name there. I don't.
You have to have insurance.
Yeah.
If you're going to swing a wrench on anybody's airplane but your own, you have to have insurance.
I feel bad. I would love to help.
Sure.
But I just have too much to lose. It's
just a horribly litigious business.
So as a Textron and a Cirrus service center, those manufacturers require their authorized service centers to have a specific level of insurance. And when you take your airplane to a Cirrus shop, for instance, they have invested a huge amount of money in insurance because it's not small insurance. And when you look right behind me in the hangar, we have 5 airplanes, and there's probably about $4 million worth of airplanes in this hangar, not including the ones out front. And when our new building is completed, we'll have even more. And so when that event occurs, and we're just talking about storing the airplanes.
Yeah, tornadoes or something.
Tornadoes
yeah,
or fire or
yeah.
something like that. We're not even talking about the work that goes
Wrenching,
out the door. Yeah, wrenching. And that's a whole nother level of yeah. But mechanics, we fear's not the right word, but there is a certain level of paranoia about getting sued because we know that the plaintiff throws that wide net, even if we had nothing to do with it. I was initially included in a lawsuit for an airplane. It was a fatal. They had trouble getting the gear down, and he flew around till he ran out of gas trying to get the gear down. But I had not seen the airplane for, I don't know, 2, almost 3 years. But because I was in the records, then it came back to me.
Wow.
So even though you're not attached to it, other work had been done on the landing gear since I saw it, but I got attached to it. It takes a certain amount of money just to get yourself off the list. And
yeah, the benefit of the insurance is not primarily the coverage limits. It's the fact that the insurance pays for your defense.
Our first question is from Rupert, who is broken by the breaking in process and dialing in with a beautiful picture of his Comanche behind him. So go ahead, Rupert.
Hi, Colleen. Hi, Paul and Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
love what you guys do. Been lurking for a long time, watching you from the side. Yeah, and you're right. It's a picture of our Comanche. Sorry, it's not the real aircraft, unlike your previous.
That's pretty close. We're going to give you points for that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it had us fooled completely.
There you go. Well,
looks
I'm
like my Comanche.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. I must start with apologizing. I have a touch of the man flu, so if you lose me halfway through,
Understand.
you'll know
Nothing
why.
worse than a man flu.
Absolutely. Okay. So anyway, when it comes to aircraft operation, I'm afraid to say we are an ocean apart. Okay. Mainly because I'm on the other side of the Atlantic from you guys.
Okay.
And I'm in the old country, England. And my wife and I own this lovely 1965 BA-24-260 Comanche, as you said. So I'm a savvy customer, fully paid up member of the Church of Unity, wide open throttle, engine data monitoring, 400-degree Fahrenheit CHTs, regular oil trend sampling, of course, and even bought myself a boroscope recently.
Well done.
Great.
Well done.
I just got to figure out how to use it now, but yeah, there we go. Last year, I was advised at the previous annual that all 6 cylinders, sadly, needed to be pulled on the IO 540 after exhaust port erosion had been found on the previous annual check. So that and further damage.
Yeah.
On all cylinders?
All 6.
Actually, not all 6. I think 3 were very bad and another 2 were questionable. But what was the final nail in the coffin was when the cylinders came off and were looked at. There was piston scuffing and some piston pin damage that was confirmed on all of the cylinders. Despite the fact I've been having regular oil samples done, none of that was showing up in the samples.
None of that's particularly concerning.
Probably every cylinder has piston pin
Piston
wear
scuffing.
and skirt scuffing. So that
that's the thing. When the maintenance is done, somebody wants to justify what they did, and
it sure sounds like the shop you're working with or maintenance maximalists who are just looking to do stuff. I don't know.
Well, it's done.
Well,
it's done.
You might be right.
It is done.
You might well be right. And I did, of course, go down the road of, so what can we do to save these cylinders? What's involved in repairing these cylinders? And they talked about welding, and they talked about, finishing off the exhaust. Well, there was some discussion of that. I mean, it's above my pay grade, to be fair, but long and short, we have some pretty high engineering hourly rates over here in the UK, and it was kind of kind of spelled out to me that really the amount of money I was going to spend on getting the cylinders repaired, like the cost benefit equation just didn't really make a lot of sense. So
yeah.
Long and short, I've got 6 new cylinder kits fitted, and we're back in the air. So the Millennium cylinders, and I was told to expect some increased CHTs during the sort of running-in period. And that is evident. So at now 5 hours in service, cylinders 5 and 6 are rapidly heading north of 420 Fahrenheit on takeoff. And as shown by the JPI 830, at which point I basically chicken out and start pulling the power back and trying to get the CHTs under control again.
How much time are on the cylinders now?
5 hours.
About 5 hours. 5.
And you've checked your fuel flow and your mag timing.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I was going on to say. The timing is spot on, apparently. The baffling has been checked. The fuel flow at full power sea level is around 25, 26 US gallons per hour.
Okay. Yep.
I climb at 130 miles an hour to try and keep the airflow good over the engine. And in the cruise, I can just about keep 5 and 6 below 400. This is lean of peak. And all the other 4 cylinders.
There's no reason to keep them that cool. I mean, our normal recommendation on Lycomings is to try to keep them at 420 or less, but for break-in, it would be more like 440 because the cylinders are going to run hot during the first few hours.
Okay,
but it sounds like you're trying to keep CHT unrealistically low, and there's no real benefit to do that.
But shouldn't it be breaking in by about 5 hours? I mean, possibly.
It should be if he's running it balls to the wall, but it sounds like he's
taking it off.
Maybe been reducing power in order to keep the cylinder head temperatures down, which is exactly what you don't want to do during break-in.
So
and that pretty much sums up my question. I was going to ask how long is that break-in period, and when could I expect to see those temperatures coming down again?
Well, if you do it right, most of the break-in is done in the first 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
But that means flying it basically, everything firewall.
Yeah, that was done by the engineering shop before I went and collected the aircraft.
Oh, they did the break-in flights
in the air.
Yeah.
Not in the air. Oh, in the air.
And have you looked at the data to see how they did it and what the
CHTs we don't know.
were?
We don't know how they did it.
I have downloaded the data from the JPI 830, and they peaked at 435 degrees on the 2 hottest cylinders.
And they were running wide open throttle at something below 3,000 feet MSL?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, if they were getting it up to 435 degrees, then they probably were running it at pretty decent power.
Yeah. But, the clue to me is that Rupert's letter, when he wrote in, he notes that the old cylinders also ran hot. So maybe he had a baffling or fuel flow. I thought fuel flow, but 25 gallons per hour is correct for this engine.
Also, my experience is that Millenniums typically do run a little bit hotter.
Yeah.
Just because of the way they're made.
So you had higher CHTs on the old cylinders as well?
Yes, but not this high. They did occasionally go up to about 405, 410 on takeoff, but it was easy enough to keep them under 400 in the cruise, lean of peak.
Yeah, but again, for a Lycoming, there's no reason to be keeping them under 400. You just as long as you can keep them under 420, you're fine.
Okay.
Lycoming cylinders run around 20 degrees hotter than Continental cylinders just normally, and they're built to take much higher temperatures. The head to barrel junction on the Lycoming cylinders is a lot more robust than on the Continental cylinders, and that's why most Lycomings have a red line like 500 degrees. You don't want to get close to 500 degrees, but the cylinder isn't.
Yeah, I was reading the IO 540 service manual today, and Lycoming are saying for my version of IO 540, which is a D4A5, 435 Fahrenheit is a max continuous with high power settings, but they do recommend keeping below 400 for service longevity, and as you say, 500 absolute maximum, and that's straight from the service manual.
Okay, well.
I still think there's, I don't know that you can do anything about it, but Comanches have notoriously poor baffling. And the contact between the cowling and the baffling is not great. So you have to really pay attention to that. And the cowling itself, it's just old. And they weren't worried about CHTs. They never had a CHT in the airplane.
Ignorance was bliss.
So, the ignorance was bliss, and they flew happily for decades. And now I had a Comanche owner that we'd been doing his annuals for years. He wanted an engine monitor. We put in a JPI 830, and I went out and did all the flight checking and no engine changes, didn't do anything to the engine. We just installed the monitor. And I flew it and everything looked normal. He got in it and flew home, called me up in an absolute panic because the CHTs were so high. And I'm like, well, yeah. He said, what'd you do to make them so high? I said, I put an engine monitor in it. Well, how did that make the CHTs high? I said, well, it didn't. It just made you aware that the CHTs were high. So anyway, he finally kind of came to an understanding, but he was getting well above 400 on takeoff. And that was a 250 with a carbureted engine.
Yeah. What I really notice that's very effectual is the outside air temperature. So in the middle of winter over here, as you know, it gets pretty cold. In the middle of summer, flying around Europe, we can have 35 degrees C days, easily at sea level. ISA plus 20, plus 25 at 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And that, certainly with the old cylinders, had a huge effect on CHTs.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will.
Yeah,
but
sounds like...
I'm happy that you're saying 435 is nothing to be too alarmed about.
Well, not during the break-in period. Let me ask you another question, Rupert. What does the oil consumption look like? Has it stabilized, or is it excessive? Or
I want to say with the straight running in oil, we are up to about 0.25 quart per hour. Does that sound about right?
So one every 5 hours?
One every 4 or 5 hours.
4 hours?
One every 4 hours, quart per 4 hours. Whereas the old engine, fully run in with 2,000 hours on it, that was about 0.1 of a quart per flying hour.
It still sounds like it's breaking in.
Yeah, you need to run it real hard.
That's still a little high.
Try to get that down a little bit.
You have license to go zorching around. That's a technical term. Go zorch.
Well, I'm cool with that. That's always fun, certainly in the Comanche.
Hey, Rupert, while I have you, can I ask you an off-the-wall question? Since I don't know if we're allowed to ask questions or not, but you're the exact person that can answer my question. And that is, your Comanche is G registered, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do British aircraft, are they still maintained under EASA rules, or did that change at Brexit? Is there separate rules now?
No. EASA basically left the building when the UK did the Brexit thing that you might be familiar with.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about.
Yeah, so the UK CAA is trying to deal with the fallout, not only for maintenance, but also pilot licensing and medicals and all sorts of things. And what they basically did, Mike, was they adopted all of the EASA comparable regulation. So whilst on one hand they waved goodbye to EASA, on the other hand, they basically adopted the same format.
Okay, so there really weren't any changes, even though it's technically not under EASA. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. Our aircraft has been in the UK since delivered new in 1965.
Wow.
And she's been here all that time. Survived one forced landing with the first engine when bits of the inside of the engine decided they wanted to be on the outside of the engine. And fortunately, no major damage to the airframe and no injuries. But
Nice job.
the engine I currently have, the bottom end at least, is 34 years old currently, from 1991.
Wow. Wonderful.
And about 20% over TBO. Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
Excellent.
finish that run
Break
in.
in.
With, some good high power and enjoy going fast for a while.
Yeah.
And you would say it's finished when the oil consumption stabilizes?
That's what Continental.
Yeah,
and
and
Lycoming say.
hopefully it will stabilize at something less
Above
than
10 hours.
a quarter every
above,
4 hours.
Yeah, above 10 hours per quart, I would
Would
be
be
looking
good.
for something like that.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I did the GAMI what do you call it, the GAMI lean spread on the previous cylinders following your technique, and came up with a 0.9 fuel flow difference across the cylinders. I haven't yet done it on the new cylinders.
Do you have position-tuned nozzles or just stock nozzles?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you have position-tuned nozzles like GAM ejectors, or do you have just the stock?
No,
okay,
no GAM ejectors. No.
0.9 is not bad. You could probably get it a little better with tuned nozzles, but 0.9 is not bad for a stock.
Yeah. Should I be concerned about a 90-degree Fahrenheit split between cylinders at the back and the front of the engine?
That's baffling, right?
Yeah, that's baffling.
But a lot of us live with spreads. No, mine's aren't bad. But,
interesting question. When you did the GAMI lean test, were those hottest running cylinders? Did they turn out to be the leanest cylinders or not?
Well, interestingly, the old and the new cylinders have swapped hottest positions. So currently I've got 6 cylinders that match CHTs in pairs. So 5 and 6 are together, more or less, within 10 degrees. 1 and 2 are together, and 3 and 4 are together. That was not the case with the old cylinders. For some reason, number 3 in the cruise always used to run hottest. Now it's numbers 5 and 6.
Which, unlike Lycomings, are the rear cylinders, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I'll keep on with the running in. Do you recommend the GAMI injectors for this sort of engine? Would it help?
If you want to fly lane of peak, it helps. Yeah.
It'll help a little bit. Your GAMI spread isn't terrible, so it's probably less than mandatory, but it would improve the mixture distribution a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Something to think about for next Christmas.
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
Break it in first. Let's see where you go, and then take it in little pieces.
Well, thank you for all of your advice. It's helpful.
It was interesting talking with you, Rupert, and we really appreciate it. I know it's different time out there. It's a little later. So thank you for giving us your dinner hour.
But the picture in the background doesn't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep. Thanks, Rupert.
Take care and good luck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Our next question is from Craig, who may have the saddest story of the day. We'll see.
I cried.
Did you cry? I haven't read it yet, so I haven't heard the story. So
I'm ready to cry.
He's ready to tell you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, Craig. So the other two have already read your story. I don't know it. So tell me the story fresh and new.
Okay. So first off, appreciate you guys.
Here ready.
Much like a lot of callers that have all the books and read all the articles and listened to podcasts, and it's your appreciation for what you guys do for GA, for safety and affordability, because these things aren't getting any cheaper and it's going that way exponentially fast. So appreciate it. Love being involved in maintenance, and you certainly help shine some light on it. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
So what happened is I have a 1981.
No, you have to start it like my youngest daughter would start a story when she was
I know
high
a guy.
Well, no. What had happened was somehow that just you're prepared. This is going to go bad.
Yes, that's right.
I'm remembering this story now. It is sad. I'm starting to cry already.
Yes. So I have a 1981 Pitts S2A, one of the last few off the line before they went to the 6-cylinder. So it's got all the factory upgrades that make it fantastic, and had it in for annual over the winter, as one does with one of these day VFR, not comfortable, no range. It does one thing, it does it really well, but everything else is compromised.
Right.
So I was had it in for annual. It's supposed to come out end of March. So hit the aerobatic season, had customers lined up and all of that. On the final run up and leak check and ops check for static RPM, all that good stuff, the technician who was doing it, who is also a flight instructor, but who knows, tail wheel experience, whatever, bad things happen, and who knows why. But the tail came up and they hit the prop on the ground.
Oh no.
So was prepared for getting it in a few hours or a day or so, and now it's going to be down for several months.
Right.
So the question is, while it is down, and there's of course the Lycoming AD with if you have a prop strike, that is one thing where they only require looking at the crank gear, to my knowledge.
The dowel pin on the gear. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So then there's two different service bulletins. One says full teardown. Here's all the different things you inspect. I think that's service bulletin 533. Mm-hmm. And then the other one where it's just look at the dowel pin is 475. I guess the long and short of it is the insurance. Thankfully, they said let's tear this whole thing down and we'll pay for that and we'll inspect it. So what would you look at on an aerobatic engine, but as most aerobatic engines out there, a lot of years in service, but not a lot of use. So it's 1,100 something hours, and it's 44-ish years old, and only has one log entry for opened up and inspected and put back together. No parts replaced or anything. That was in 2009. It didn't seem to be related to a prop strike or anything. They just, for no apparent reason, opened it up and looked at it and put it back together.
So you're saying while they're in there, what else should they look for at the convenience of having the case opened up?
Yeah, somewhat because it's aerobatic, sometimes somewhat because it's a little bit of time in service, let's say.
And you also mentioned that you've got a crank that's subject to an AD 841305, which does recurring magnetic particle inspection on the crankshaft flange.
This is a fixed pitch prop.
This is a constant speed prop.
It's a constant speed prop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a 200 horse constant speed prop.
So it's IO360, I guess.
There must be a different AD than I'm thinking of.
So, I mean, one obvious thing, and I think that's what you're fishing for, is why not replace that crank while you have it open with one that doesn't require the recurring inspection?
And they have, so apparently that's not a requirement. I read, I think the service bulletin is if you open it, then it has to be replaced, but the AD, the prop strike AD doesn't require that. So technically it doesn't need to be replaced, but then you're left with one that A, has had some history now, and B, has this really nasty AD that's a pain in the butt. Well, but either way, they've actually agreed to replace that. So that's getting replaced, which is
they're
awesome.
Replacing the crankshaft?
With the new one that does not have the AD.
Oh my God. You should be thanking your lucky stars.
Yes. For sure.
We need to find out what insurance underwriter this is. Yeah, this is really.
I didn't understand that from your letter. That's
whatever
great.
happened to no betterments? Wow, that's amazing.
Well, I think, they feel bad. I've been pushing for it because, with crankshaft flange loads and prop loads with doing different kind of aerobatic maneuvers. Said, I don't love the idea of putting this thing back in.
Well, once you've done the crankshaft, there isn't any, all the other stuff that you mentioned because of the calendar time. I don't know. Hopefully you're keeping up with magnetos and fuel system things. You might look at that. But in terms of the core engine, wow, they've done the crankshaft. That means they're doing everything in the core engine. The core engine is an overhaul. There's no way around it.
Well, but they're not doing an overhaul. They're not replacing bearings and.
Well, they have to replace
bearings. The real issue is what are the condition of the cylinders? And whether they're going to have to do cylinder work.
Yeah, I mean, because you put on the crankshaft, it has to have new bearings on the mains and the rods because you've got a new crankshaft.
But so the cylinders, they probably won't replace the cylinders for a prop strike.
No, they won't do anything to the cylinders. But he was asking, what should he be looking at?
But they're going to redo. They're going to redo the connecting rods, right? Put new. Well, they'll put new bearings and bushings in it.
They don't always do the bushings because that's at the top end at the piston.
Yeah, but they're usually sloppy.
Well, I mean, they could be. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But at least the bearings.
Yeah, they wouldn't put old big end bearings back on the new crankshaft. They'd always put new bearings in.
Right, but you said bushings.
Bushings are at the other end. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now they'll often leave those if they're within spec. They'll just put those back in service. And given the recent history on those, I think I would probably I'd probably want the old ones in service.
Yeah,
right, no
true.
kidding. Yeah.
That's true.
But they wouldn't do anything in the accessory case, replace gears or.
No. Well, the gears are all.
Well,
fine.
they probably inspect them.
Yeah, they're going to inspect them before they put them back. In all the years that I've done prop strike. Tear down inspections, send them out. Now
you never find anything.
I've never had any engine, and that's like gear up landings, hit the curb, fly into the building, you name it. High power, low power, not a single one.
This one sounds like a high power prop strike.
That's if the tail was up.
Yeah.
So, but even
and
still,
he didn't mention that after the tail went up, it went back down again.
Yeah. That's the next step.
Apparently slammed down pretty hard too.
Yeah. Yes. So you won't find rotational damage in the core engine from the prop strike. Magnetos, prop governor, engine. If you have I don't know if it has a rotary fuel pump or not, but those kind of things I would be very concerned about. But the core of the engine. Now you're taken care of there.
Okay.
Under the circumstances, I would be kind of surprised if his insurance company didn't subrogate against the shop's insurance company on this one.
Well, yeah, they probably will. Yeah.
Oh, this is not my insurance whatsoever. This is purely the shop's insurance.
This is the shop's.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why they're being so generous.
Yeah. This is all sound.
That's a good story. It's not as sad
except
story
for
as
the downtime that you're getting, except for that, it's actually a pretty good deal.
Work.
Yeah.
This sounds like a windfall, except like you say, except for the downtime.
Painful, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you also have airframe damage on the rudder or on the tail.
Oh. Yeah. So the tail wheel, I don't know what you'd call it, but there's a fairly decent chunk of aluminum. I would assume it's back there, and it's got a fairly sharp edge, and came up and put a little nick in the bottom of the rudder. It's just the steel tubing that makes up the rudder. And
okay,
that sounds pretty serious on an aerobatic airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since writing this, they have reached out to the manufacturer chief inspector and sent all the pictures and talked about all the things that happened. They're super transparent, which is fantastic. And this wouldn't hesitate to use this shop again. They've been wonderful to work with, despite an oopsie. But the manufacturer did come back and say, no, we wouldn't do anything else. This is all great what you've done. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it was mostly just actually fabric and not actually into the steel tubing that makes up the
Oh
rudder.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good then. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds
So,
fine.
so can we presume that this mechanic is no longer allowed to do run-ups of tailwheel airplanes?
I wish I knew more of that story because
that part wasn't transparent, right?
yes, it was a bad day for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow,
I
what a
mean,
shame.
things had so, and not to, the first person to tell a story didn't have a chance. We had one of my guys, this is almost 15, almost 20 years ago, doing a run up on a Cessna 206 outside with the tail into the wind, which starts off bad.
Mhm.
Didn't have the control lock removed, so he didn't have the yoke all the way back, which I require the yoke be all the way back for engine runs. I mean, even on a Cirrus, it doesn't do much good, but you hold it back anyway. Sure enough, a little gust came along and the airplane just at full power, the airplane just tilted up and
Wow.
there it sat on the left main, the nose gear and the left wingtip.
Wow.
And
Ooh.
I'm in the office and you hear all this, and it just stops. It just stops. And it's like, oh, I know what that is. And I looked out the window and there it was.
We were doing engine runs yesterday on my Lancer to balance the prop, and I stood outside and watched it. And when you go to full power, that nose gear compresses.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
prop was maybe 2 inches from the ground, so it
Looking
doesn't
up
take
gravel.
much. It's scary. So yeah.
Yeah, we used to have to sweep the ramp. Our ramp
Yes.
is much better now, but used to we'd have to sweep all the loose gravel so we wouldn't catch it up in the prop.
Think
But-
about that when you do a run up in the run up area. I always have to stick back when I'm doing that, especially
Absolutely.
the tailwheel airplane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, look on the bright side. They didn't get the spinner.
Well, that's another bright part of it is the prop was pretty darn chewed up, and so they're actually just replacing that as well. So that's
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah.
I don't
Make it out like a
I'm
bandit.
sorry. I'm not crying on this story at all here. I don't
Yeah.
know. You guys are. This is all.
Yeah.
It's maybe
No,
not a
it's-
win-win, but it's a win.
It's the insurance adjuster that's crying here.
That's true.
Yes.
The insurance
Just gotta-
adjuster's out crying in the car.
not to
Yeah.
advertise that too much, where they're like, "Hey, that was dumb. Let's
Yeah.
change our mind."
Well, anyway,
Okay.
that was it, and I'm glad I'm not crying. So I got the
Ah.
tissues out, but didn't need them.
Hope you get the plane back soon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much longer are they saying?
I tried calling the shop.
But they're out of business.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
it's been torn down, but I only heard that from the director of maintenance, who was the one who had the oopsie.
No.
So he's been good, but I think it's still in the same vein of what you guys see probably a lot with maintenance providers and owners. The maintenance kind of runs their show, and the owner is just kind of subject to, in a good way. I mean, they're not in a terrible way, at least we'll say. They're just used to owners being very hands off, and they run with
Compliant.
Yeah, and my mentality has
Passive.
been like, I can't legally do the work myself, and practically probably couldn't do the work either.
Yeah.
But I'm the one who's responsible and needs to.
Yeah, that's
Tell
exactly
them
the
and
right
everything.
attitude.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been a refreshing boost of confidence. I've been in the maintenance world, car maintenance, for a long time, and car maintenance people have no problem saying, "No, I don't want to do that. I do want to do that," that sort of thing. But airplanes, I think people, they just don't want to even educate themselves. Maybe because it's so hard and confusing, but B,
Yeah. Well, we work really hard to try to change that, but
Yeah.
you're right. A lot of aircraft owners are passive and think that it's mechanic stuff. I don't want to be involved.
Yeah, I hear
not
all the
for everybody.
time, my maintenance shop missed this inspection, and I always think, like, how did you not catch that when you're reviewing their logbook entry or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
they didn't miss it, you
Well,
didn't.
because they never reviewed their
They-
logbook
they
entry
don't.
because they left their logs down at the shop all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
It's
one
the
of my
worst place
pet
to put
peeves.
'em.
I've got a lot of pet peeves, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
yeah, that's insane to me. Like, they're not responsible for your maintenance at all. They simply do the maintenance.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, you're the owner's responsible to make all those
Yeah,
decisions.
the shop is a subcontractor,
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
and
in reality,
the owner is a general contractor.
yeah, in reality, and somewhat, I mean, it's not their fault because there's a million different airplanes out there, and I'm the expert in the pits because it's my own airplane and I care, and they don't see a lot of those, and so I end up researching everything and end up knowing more about them on this airplane. They know way more about everything else, but
I do the Cessna Pod Association classes, and that's exactly how I present it to the owner. So 3 days on a 210 or 2 days on 182, and I tell them, look, your mechanic only sees 1 210 a year, and it's yours.
right.
It's not worth their investment in time to be an expert on your airplane. So you be the expert to help them out, not in physically doing it so much, but in knowing what service bulletins are important, what are not, where the rust is, where the corrosion is, what things bend when they shouldn't. So you're spot on.
It's a head work versus the handwork responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, that's excellent.
It's good. Yeah.
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 Man, this is a tough business. Thanks for doing
it's
it.
not such it's an uplifting story.
Yes, it's uplifting, but it had that climax, just like in the movies.
Yeah.
So, we got right there.
Has a happy ending.
Has a happy ending. Excellent.
You guys can work your editing magic to tell the story.
No, you did just fine.
Oh, that's a good job. Good job.
And how is the rudder repair being handled, or is it being replaced, or what?
No, I said, hey, with as much stress this thing gets, like, a lot of airspeed and full rudder usage, I would feel a lot more comfortable if you sent it to Aviat and had them look at the thing and maybe, fill it off and recover it, whatever.
Perfect.
And they were apparently, Aviat was just fine with seeing the pictures and hearing the story. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, if it's just a fabric, that you could put a patch on it if you had to, but it's no big deal.
I wish I had some pictures to send to you, but I have not gotten those.
Well, thanks for the call, Craig. That was that was fun. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys, and again, thanks. I've sent the books to some friends as gifts who are, thinking about airplane ownership. I think it's silly to own one without having those in your arsenal.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
These
I agree.
podcasts as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Take
Cool.
care.
Thanks, guys.
See
Hope
ya.
you're back in the air soon.
Appreciate it.
Our next question is from Larry, who is perplexed by the pixels. Go ahead, Larry.
So I have been a Dynon aficionado, I guess you could say. Well, I'm not an expert, but I built a Bearhawk 4-place about 10 years ago, and I've been flying. I had a Dynon Skyview system in it, and I've also actually started an aviation program for youth, which is kind of relevant to your discussion.
Awesome.
We're building RB-12s, and we actually have a couple of kids that are going to Lewis University for A&P school. So I hope I'm doing a part.
Very cool.
But
You are.
the Dynon is something I'm really comfortable with, and that's what we're putting in the RB-12. And actually, I'm also building an RB-14 because my mission has changed. I have grandchildren across the country, but I'm just getting now to where I'm actually really trying to refine my use of the IO390 engine that's in it, and I found that the lean of peak indication on the manifold under the manifold pressure would say I was lean of peak before the cylinders actually peaked, and that was kind of my question in contacting you guys. And I had tried to look through all the Dynon installation manuals and everything. And actually, since I talked with you, I did find one paragraph in the installation manual, which I hadn't seen. And it said I have to adjust the horsepower setting in the Dynon settings. Even though it's rated at 210 horsepower, if it's a more efficient engine, like a high compression engine like the 390, it may not correlate exactly. So I did reset that, and that seemed to bring it closer to where it needs to be. So, and this sort of brings up the same question that you entertain just about every podcast, and that is, lean of peak operations and how do you lean? And the Dynon also has a lean operation in it that you can switch to. So you have the four EGT readings, and then you press the lean button, and as you lean out, it will tell you which cylinder leans first, all the way through to the fourth cylinder to go lean, and then it'll tell you what your gallons per hour spread is between the first and the last, which I haven't spent a lot of time with it yet, but I'm hoping to do that. And I was wondering, is that something that could replace the lean GAMI test that you guys recommend?
It is.
Sounds like it is the lean GAMI test.
Sounds like it is the GAMI test.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You just have to do it slow enough to get valuable readings.
Yeah.
See, this is why, experimental avionics are always 10 years ahead of certified avionics.
Yeah.
I feel like your programs have probably 90% certified airplanes, and I feel like experimental. That's all I've ever done now, and of course, being right near Oshkosh, I take a bunch of high school kids up there every year, and we camp out and hang out for 3 nights. And
you're a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, it's been a blast. This is my retirement gig, but it's the experimental world. I do feel like I'm getting a better product than I could get if I bought a used plane for the same amount of money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking forward to using the Savvy expertise with my new IO 390, which I'm waiting on. I ordered it in February of 2024, and I'm getting it in September of this year. So my plane is all ready to go, except it doesn't have an engine. But
so
I want to make use of the services.
Larry, would you like a little insight, a mathematical insight into how that Richard Peak Lena Peak indicator would work in the Dynon software?
Absolutely.
I obviously I don't know what Dynon's algorithm is, but
it's proprietary.
But I know how we do it in our engine modeling that we do for all the AI stuff that we do, and it's basically kind of in principle the only way to do it. The engine can operate in two distinctively different modes. When it's operating rich of peak, the power that an engine puts out is a function of whichever of the air or fuel is in shortest supply. If air is in short supply, then air is going to control the power output of the engine. That's what happens when you reach your peak. When you reach your peak, you got more fuel than you know what to do with, and it's airflow through the engine that determines horsepower. And how do we control airflow through the engine? We control it with manifold pressure and with RPM. Manifold pressure determines how much air you can stuff in a cylinder when the exhaust valve opens, or the intake valve opens. And RPM determines how often you stuff it. So airflow through the engine is more or less proportional to manifold pressure multiplied by RPM, and then multiplied by some fudge factor to make horsepower come out. And the fudge factor depends on what the horsepower rating of the engine is. So if you change the horsepower rating of the engine, you change that fudge factor. But at any rate, it's you calculate it by manifold pressure times RPM times the fudge factor equals horsepower. When you're lean of peak, then you're in the opposite situation. You got more airflow than you know what to do with through the engine, and fuel is what's in shortest supply. And so power output of the engine is proportional to fuel flow. In fact, like for a 8.5 to 1 compression ratio engine, it's 14.9 times fuel flow in gallons per hour gives you horsepower. And manifold pressure and RPM don't come into the equation, only fuel flow. So now if you're trying to develop software that indicates whether the engine is rich or peak or lean of peak. Basically, the way you do it is this. You say, I don't know whether it's lean of peak or rich of peak. Let's calculate the power output both ways. So you run the formula that's manifold pressure times RPM times the fudge factor, and you get some horsepower output. And then you run the other equation, which is fuel flow times the fudge factor. That fudge factor is a function of compression ratio. So say gallons per hour times 14.9 or something. And you get another horsepower. And whichever of the two horsepowers is lower, that's the right one. So if the lean of peak formula gives you the lower horsepower output, then you're lean of peak. If the rich of peak formula gives the lower horsepower output, then you're rich of peak. So that's, I'm sure, some variant of what I just described is, I'm sure, what the software in the Dynon does.
So I wonder about trusting the percent power indication I'm getting from the Dynon too, and that kind of, with the adjustment in the horsepower setting, getting close, ringing the lean of peak, rich of peak, and peak settings right where the temperatures are actually peaking, then I suppose I could trust that percent horsepower reading as well. Because I always worry about, am I leaning at more than 70% power, and I don't want to do that. In fact, on one of your previous podcasts, you mentioned leaning on climb out. I'm full throttle and 18 gallons an hour, and how far back do I bring it? And I think you mentioned watching the EGTs and kind of trying to keep it stable.
Yep.
Is that pretty much the
same
best indicator?
Yeah, that's a reasonable way to handle mixture in the climb in a normally aspirated engine.
Well, you're not keeping it stable, but you're maintaining the same EGT on the climb out. So as the air gets thinner, you're dialing the fuel back to maintain that same EGT.
Right. Well, listening to you guys over the years, it gives me more and more things to want to do when I'm flying. And
there you go.
I got to go up with somebody else, so I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed with trying to look at everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But at any rate, that parameter that that you put in that tells what the horsepower rating of the engine, that's going to affect the power calculation when you're rich of peak. It won't have any effect on the calculation when you're lean of peak. And so adjusting that is going to shift where the crossover point is in the calculation. And if you get it to the right number, then it should switch to rich of peak, from rich of peak indication to lean of peak indication, at the right time, when the EGT's at its maximum.
I've always heard that, you can pretty much do anything to the engine if you're less than 70% power. I guess from what I'm hearing, it's not absolutely critical, I guess. Obviously I'm higher power when I'm taking off, but I'm not going to lean it out too much at that point.
So this is a Lycoming IO 390.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, we basically like to advise you to try to focus on cylinder head temperature and to try to keep the cylinder head temperature at 420 or lower.
I don't think my cylinders have ever been over 390.
Yeah.
I was running like the high 200s for the first few hundred hours, and I got sticky valves on 2 and 4 and ended up having to deal with that. And I've been running it a lot harder and trying to get the temperatures up since then. And I've got another 600 hours and with no problem. I'm hoping that was the issue.
Good.
If you lean the engine aggressively, especially if you operate at lean of peak, and if you lean it aggressively during ground operations, or what we like to call leaning it brutally during ground operations, which means lean it as far as you can without the engine stumbling.
Yeah.
that will help minimize the valve sticking problem. All Lycomings have valve sticking problems. It's just the nature of the beast, but they're caused by buildup of deposits on the valve stem, on the exhaust valve stem, and
Because they run so cool.
by operating the engine very, very lean, you minimize that deposit buildup.
I'm looking forward to my new plane with a brand new IO 390. So I've got this 800 hours on my original one that I bought new, and now I get to try it again and see if I can do it as best I can with you guys' help. And I haven't signed up with Savvy Aviation, although I've started to do bore scoping and uploading those. Good. But with the new one from the beginning, I think it'll be a real help. And I'm trying to sell you guys to the experimental community around here, and so I'll keep talking them up.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I don't know about Paul. I know Colleen is big with experimentals, and I just salivate over experimentals. I'm too old and have too short an attention span to think about building an airplane. I always think, oh man, if I had just done that when I got out of college, or something.
Yeah.
I didn't get my pilot's license till I was 52, and finished my Bearhawk in when I was 58, and I'll finish this 14 hopefully when I'm 68. So never too late, Mike.
No.
So did you work on it for 6 years? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but it laid on the shelf. I bought the kit in 2007 and had kids in high school, and life got in the way. And then I took it on full time, and it took me 3,000 hours in the hangar from about 2011 to 2015.
Wow.
But now the 14 is going a lot faster, and building. We're on our 4th RB12 with the high school kids, so I'm starting to figure this stuff out.
Yeah,
that's great. That's
fantastic.
Great.
What a great experience. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for the question. I learned a little bit there.
Yeah.
And it was nice to talk experimentals for a change.
Yes, absolutely.
An IO 390 is a stroked IO 360. Is that what it is? It's the same
higher.
Same cylinder.
Higher compression. I think it's just a bored out 360. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, higher compressions wouldn't change the display.
Yeah, so just bigger jugs on it, because
is it bigger jugs, or is it
different piston?
Is it a longer stroke on the crankshaft?
I don't know that.
I don't think it's a different crankshaft. I think
because that's how when Continental went from the 520 to 550, that's how they did it. The cylinders are the same. It's just the crankshaft has a 1/4 inch more throw to it. So we'll have to look it up.
It's been a great engine. Good balance between power and weight.
Probably already looked it up.
No, I haven't. I thought it had just a different piston with a little more compression on it, but
yeah, that would increase horsepower, but that would increase displacement, so that couldn't account for a 360 becoming a 390.
Okay, I disagree.
I know that when I did the cowling, the normal Bearhawk has a 360 in it, and I had to actually put little bubbles on the cowling because the intake manifolds protruded out further.
So that sounds like they did put different cylinders on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, well, thank you, Larry, for your question, and enjoy that 14. I mean, the 14.
Yeah, 14. Yeah.
In September, we'll be thinking about you. Bye.
Okay.
We love experimentals.
Our next question is from Dave, who wants to see inside an engine that's been sitting around. Go ahead, Dave.
So the last time I ran my engine was 7 years ago. And just quickly, the reason for that is, as I started to do an owner-assisted annual, I pulled out the interior. I stripped the entire interior, front to back, top to bottom, and I was shocked to find corrosion in the cabin everywhere. And I traced
The
it back to
170.
the rear window.
Okay. Oh,
The
leaking
last
windows.
person had installed the rear window and trimmed it very, very poorly. And as a result, the former owner kept it outside, and the rainwater wicked into that felt, and it completely corroded the window retainers. And years of annual, no A&P ever reported that to me. I had to find that myself by stripping the cabin. So at that time, I said, I have to clean this up. And I, did research about what's the best way to mitigate corrosion on aluminum. I ended up experimenting, trying different things. And it took me 1.5 years of spare time work to thoroughly clean that cabin.
Well, that's pretty quick.
You know what? Yeah, it was quick. I can't tell you how many times I stayed in that hangar till 2, 3 in the morning, exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I finally got that all done. I cleaned it, epoxy primed it, and then I began to look around and I said, maybe this is a good time for a new interior. And suddenly I thought I should have a new alternator. And I got that kind of creep going on.
Oh, gosh.
Because the whole cowling is off, all the wires are detached. Anyway,
the most expensive words you can ever speak are, well, while we're at it.
While we're at it. Yeah.
Exactly.
While we're at it.
But,
Okay.
So I had a very big case of while I'm at it. I don't know where the 7 years went. It felt like I was making progress and I was going to be able to wrap this up. But I run a business and I was able to do this only in my spare time. So now I'm all done. I'm faced with starting that engine, but I don't know what's been going on in it. And one of my big concerns is that if I have corrosion, is that something that could cause catastrophic failure in the engine? Or is that
But Dave,
something that's...
You
that's
need to
just gonna-
describe, you did pickle the engine.
I did.
So describe that. Yeah.
So I mixed aerosol oil with the Lycoming corrosion inhibitor.
Yeah.
And I put it in a pressurized tank and I shot it into the engine under pressure. The cylinders, the tube, what do you call that tube at the back of the engine? The breather tube.
Oh, okay.
So I shot that solution under pressure down into the push rod tubes everywhere I could possibly do it. Theorizing that at least mist is going to maybe reach the crankcase. Maybe it's going to drip down onto the cam faces. And I had a dehumidifier all that time, and I've also had desiccant plugs all that time, and I changed them religiously.
Shoot, you ought to just go fly this thing.
That's what
somebody,
I think.
somebody educate me. I didn't know Lycoming had an anti-corrosive additive. What are we talking about?
The LW for the oil additive.
That
I
is totally not an anti-corrosion anything. That's an extreme pressure lubricant.
Well,
that's an anti-scuff thing. That's not a corrosion.
Sorry, I misspoke. What I meant to say is I made a very heavy ratio of oil and
the snake oil, the LW 16702.
The cam guard.
Oh, cam guard. Oh, yeah.
Cam guard.
Okay.
Corrosion inhibitor.
There you go.
Okay, now we're going. That makes sense.
All right, but as I said, if I've got pitting on those cam lobes, or my journals have rust and pitting, is it dangerous to fly that engine?
No, airplanes don't fall out of the sky because of rust on camshafts and cam followers.
But they sometimes fall out of the sky when people pull cylinders off of them to take a look inside. So don't
Absolutely.
pull a cylinder. Go fly the
Yep.
airplane.
Yeah. So
Really?
And one of two things will happen. Either the engine will start making metal in the filter, or it won't.
Hmm.
If you fly it for 100 hours and the filter is still relatively clean,
you're
then
good.
you dodge the bullet. You're good to go, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, okay. Okay,
And-
because I was feeling that I would have to pull that cylinder.
Yeah, the
No.
O320s, O320 is one of those engines where there's really no good way to get a bore scope in.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
you
just
could
fly it.
you could pull the engine out of the airplane and drop the oil pan and come up from the bottom. God forbid you could pull a cylinder, but don't bother because
All right.
You did everything right.
Nothing
Yeah.
that could be wrong corrosion wise is anything that's a safety of flight item. It's only a safety of wallet item.
Yep.
So just fly it. And now it would be a different story if you were doing a pre-buy. Okay,
Oh,
that'd be a
yeah.
whole
Sure,
different,
right.
because
A lot of
now it's a
red
question of
flags.
who gets to pay for the camshaft replacement
Yeah.
and the lifter replacement.
Yeah.
But you're not doing a pre-buy, so just
Just
fly
fly
it
it.
and cross your fingers and keep cutting the oil filter open.
Yep.
And if you don't see metal in there, you're okay.
I would
Okay.
probably recommend doing an oil change and filter change early on the first one. I don't know,
Sure.
10, 15 hours.
Just clean it out.
yeah.
Clean it out, because whatever is,
Because there probably
engine,
is rust.
If there
that's gonna
is,
come off.
then it's going to all come off in that first run, and you want to get that out of the filter pretty quick.
Now there's another thing. You it's perfectly reasonable when you pull those desiccant plugs out before you put the real plugs in. Stick a bore scope in and take a look inside the cylinders. If the cylinders
Yeah.
the cylinders don't look corroded, then you're pretty sure the bottom end isn't going to look corroded either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
just a anecdotal here. This may mean nothing to your engine. I have a local customer. I'll spare you the long story, but 2 airplanes involved, both with Lycoming engines. After 8 years of sitting and no preservative methods attached in any way, shape, or form, the airplanes flew, they were parked, shoved into the community hangar. One of the engines we did an annual on last year, and the insides were absolutely pristine.
Wow.
Unbelievably
How lucky.
And
pristine.
this is in Jackson, Tennessee, where the humidity is not zero.
Not well, the humidity is definitely not zero. The other airplane, which we subsequently figured out had been moved from hangar to hangar occasionally and spent time in a hangar that was open and closed often. The first airplane was put in a community hangar that almost never got opened, so it just sat there. The second airplane, the engine was full of rust. Lifters, camshafts, cylinders, and we cranked them both up. We had some stuck valves, got all that resolved, ran the engines, and most of the rust broke off on that first run. So, you did all the good things, and more than likely that engine looks really nice. Just run it, check the oil, and it'll be fine.
I would agree.
All right. That sounds
fly
like
it.
very good advice. When I do start the engine for the first time, I'm, thinking that I don't want the engine to ignite right away, that I should probably, let the oil pump run and circulate oil.
Yeah, do that
it's-
without
it's
spark
good.
plugs.
Good to motor it without spark plugs until
Yep.
you get an oil pressure indication.
Yes.
Can I just take out the top plugs, or do both have to come out?
No,
Won't
top
matter.
plugs. Yeah.
Top, bottom,
See?
as long as one plug per cylinder.
Yeah, so you're not fighting compression with a starter motor.
Okay.
Disconnect the spark plug leads from it. If you leave any spark plugs in, disconnect the leads, because it will ignite and you'll have a little flame shooting out the open spark plug hole.
That sounds
I can-
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Yeah. I
imagine.
burned a
Okay.
shirt one time doing a
Really?
Yeah, I did. I was 17. I was dialing the crankshaft on a Mooney engine that was sitting on the floor of the hangar.
And you were moving it?
And I'm just turning the engine, to dial it. And bottom spark plugs were in, P leads were off of the mags. And
Where
I
was
heard
the fuel coming from?
it'd been sitting
wasn't it?
It'd been sitting in the engine for 30 days. And there was enough in there. I mean, you don't think so, but it'll do it. And when that third impulse coupling fired on cylinder number 1, because that's the one I was leaning over, and it shot out a jet of flames about 18 inches long.
And you were medium rare.
I was medium rare.
And when you're motoring the engine with a starter with the spark plugs out, if you don't get an oil pressure indication after about 30 seconds, let the starter rest for a little bit before you keep cranking.
Like
it may take several.
So it doesn't overheat.
May take several. It might take several 30-second iterations to get an oil pressure indication, but the starter motors will get too hot if you crank them for too long. So
about a 25% duty cycle. So a 1 to 4. If you run it for 30 seconds, let it sit for a good 4 minutes.
David, it sounds like you're going flying sometime soon.
Flying. Paul, just quickly, I wanted to mention to you, I took your Cessna Systems and Procedure course.
I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah. But you and I exchanged comments about our accents. To my ear, you have the southern twang, and to your ear, I've got this brusque Boston accent.
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly told you, I said, I drove down here in my car, and then I parked my car. And then I asked, where's the bathroom? So,
that's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. But we can still be friends. It's okay.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, thank you very much. That was a big help, and I'm not gonna take that cylinder off.
Good deal.
Good. Yay, we saved a cylinder.
Yay.
We've done our duty. Okay, thanks for the call, David.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. For those of you still listening, thanks for hanging with us to the bitter end of this podcast. I hope we kept you on the edge of your seats with some good information and a little joking around. We love your feedback, but most importantly, please send us your questions. No query is too small or too basic. You can always email us at podcasts@aopa.org.
See you, everybody.
bye.